Hey y'all, I'm back. I am Mama Berry, and I'm the author of Foundations of Spirituality, a guide for the highly energetic, vigorously animated, exuberantly bustling brain. I'm also the owner and operator of thatmamaberrylife.com. It's a spiritual learning community, and you can find me on Facebook. You can check us out at thatmamaberrylife.com. There's also an introductory video somewhere in here that will go more in depth about who I am and what I'm doing here. So you can go check that out. Tonight, we are going to move into the next video in our astrology series, video number 5, titled The Moving Pieces. Now that we've got a basic understanding of the zodiac and the natal chart and what those moving pieces are, we're going to take a closer look at what they mean and how they express themselves in the nativity. We dug into this a little bit in the past video, a lot of it, but we're going to stick with the analogy of the play and go deeper in this video. So, as an overview, our life is a play, right? And the natal chart is the script in that play. That's the overall analogy that we're using to help us really understand how astrology looks in our life. The planets are the characters in the play. Each planet brings a specific personality with different tendencies and proclivities to the natal chart. They tend to lean towards certain areas in life, and they have become archetypes over those domains. For example, Mars is the god of war, and Venus is the goddess of love. The houses are the scenes in the play. Houses rule over specific areas of life. For example, the 4th house is the house of home and family, and the 7th house is the house of intimate relationships and partnerships. The signs flavor the scenes. They give direction to the way any planetary body expresses itself within their boundaries. For example, Libra is a sign that seeks balance, justice, and fairness. If Mars is in Libra in the nativity, Libra will direct Mars to look for balance and compromise before taking action. But Mars' nature is to act quickly, aggressively, and go to war if need be. They're in conflict, so the native will have more trouble expressing those qualities that Mars brings to the table if Mars is in Libra. The natal chart sets the location of each planet inside of a house and sign based on your birth date, time, and location. So, every natal chart contains every house and sign in some combination. If your rising sign is Libra, then you have Libra in the 1st house. The next constellation is Scorpio, so that will be in the 2nd house, and so on and so forth. And like I briefly mentioned in the last video, even if you have nothing inside of the house, even if you have no planetary bodies inside of a house, your house is still there in the chart. So the 1st house is still attached to a constellation. Whether it's empty or not doesn't matter. The 1st house is still going to rule over yourself, your body, and it's going to express those qualities through the nature of the constellation that's attached to it. It's important to remember that, and it's important to analyze that inside of your chart in relation to anything else that's going on. All right, so that needed to be said, but we're going to continue to talk about the sign. The sign lets us know how well the planetary bodies in your natal chart can function. Their placement can be supportive or oppressive. So now we're talking about the planets in the signs, right? Not the signs that don't have any planets in them or houses that don't have any planets in them, but the planets in the signs. They can be supported or they can be oppressed. These are called essential dignities. They're an important way to determine whether your planet will function as a leading character, an extra in the background, or somewhere in between. Historically, the essential dignities are used to give weight to a planet, anywhere from +5 points to -5 points. And that really depends on the exact definition. So let's quickly define those essential dignities. A planet in domicile is a planet in the sign that it rules, just like Mercury was in Gemini in our last video. Planets in domicile show up exactly the way they are meant to show up, as the king or the queen of their domain. There's nothing restraining them at all, and those planets' characteristics might show up in excess or out of balance. Planets in domicile are considered to be dignified. Their expression is strengthened. If you want to use the point system, it's plus 5 points. A planet in exaltation is a planet in a sign where it performs effortlessly and in the ways that we expect it to. When a planet is exalted, it is as if the sign is elevating its function. A planet in exaltation is considered to be dignified. Its expression is strengthened. And if you want to use the point system, it's plus 4 points, I believe, but it's a positive point value. A planet in detriment or exile in astrology is a planet in a sign where it struggles and where it has to find different, more unconventional ways to express itself. When a planet is in detriment or in exile, its expression is weakened, minus 5 points. A planet in its fall is a planet in a sign where it tends to struggle, but it also holds great wisdom about that particular sign. When a planet is in its fall, its expression is weak or unconventional. It's minus 4 points. So, essential dignities, it's an important point. We need to remember they are neither good nor bad. They are neutral. A planet in exaltation or in its own domicile might be strong or strengthened, but it might be so strong that it's functioning out of balance or in excess. There might not be enough to counter the strength behind how that planet expresses itself. So Mars, for example, in Aries, the sign that it rules, that can be a hard aspect to work with. Because who's going to stop the god of war from starting wars in the hot-headed sign of Aries? We don't want to see any planet out of balance, but Mars can be openly aggressive when there is nothing to stop him. Here's a note on essential dignities as well. You might find conflicting information on essential dignities for the outer planets. They were not traditionally assigned dignities, as the slower moving planets were discovered later on. And when they were discovered, nobody alive at that time had yet had the chance to observe how they behaved as they traveled through each constellation. So, if you find essential dignities on the outer planets, take that information with a grain of salt, do some further research before you begin to use them. The goal is to find a way to use knowledge consistently, and if you need to adapt later on and change things as you learn more, it's pretty easy to switch the rules up or drop them entirely if you've been consistent in how you're using them. So however you use essential dignities, use them with consistency. Next, we want to talk about the house of joy. Planets have houses where they are especially happy, where the archetype they embody fits the area the house rules so well, they just work together like peanut butter and jelly. So really quickly, the house of joy for the planets are Mercury. His house of joy is the first house. The moon's is the third. Venus is the fifth. Mars is the sixth. The sun is the ninth. Jupiter is the 11th. And Saturn is the 12th. And again, we make note that the house of joy does not mean that the planet is necessarily bringing joy to the native, just like having a planet in its own domicile is not inherently either good or bad. We can see that the nature of Saturn finds its joy in the 12th house because it can express the shadows of the 12th house with ease. The shadows with ease. One of those things that can be a shadow and a focal point of the 12th house is psychological struggles. So if Saturn is in the 12th house, enhancing psychological struggles, because that's what Saturn can do with ease in the 12th house, that's not something that the native might necessarily want to be able to express with ease. So in this case, that's a focal point where the native, number one, wants to know about it. And then number two, you might want to be somebody who seeks additional external help with anything that might present as a psychological challenge or struggle, because you know you have a proclivity towards that, right? With Saturn in the 12th house. So it's important to try not to judge these things. It's important to just understand that these are focal points, and we're going to get to focal points in a video in the future. We're going to use focal points to help put our own chart together. But these are focal points that are really important in our nativity, and it's how we're going to start to study ourselves, okay? So now we're going to take a look at planets and their meanings. We already saw in our last video how Mercury might behave in the 9th house of Gemini. So here we're going to briefly go over some of the attributes for each planet. It's a handout. I provided it in last year's class, and it's still in the group. But by the end of these videos, they'll all be available, refreshed and renewed in our group. So you'll be able to use them to work through your own chart. So we're about to go over the attributes for each planet. I created this handout last year during class, and I provided it at the end of the class. So it's still in the group, but I'll provide it again just so that it kind of floats to the top and be available in groups, that you can use this worksheet and this handout for yourself as you work through your own natal chart. Okay, so let's go. We're going to start with the sun so that we can orient ourselves to how this is laid out and how you can use it for your own natal chart. You'll see that I've listed the planet and the role of the planet, its essential dignities, its house of joy, and then on the right side of the chart is kind of a blank space so that you can fill in all of this information that's already here on the left side for your own natal chart. You can use the left side as a reference. On the right side, you fill it in on your own natal chart and refer to the left side if you forget something, which you likely will, because astrology has many moving pieces, right? I'm not going to go over all of the planets. I'm just going to start with the sun. And I'm going to stick with the analogy we've been working inside of, which is the play. In the play, which is the script, which is our natal chart, the character is representing the planets. And the sun is the giver of life, God. The characteristics, or some of the characteristics that the sun brings to the scene, to his character, is the divine masculine. The divine masculine is action-oriented. The sun will bring our purpose. The sun will bring the conscious, or our conscious will, who we are, who we grow to become. The sun will bring our ego and our identity. So the sun is our core nature. You understand, right? Then there are essential dignities assigned to the sun. The sun is in its domicile, or its home, in Leo, the sign and the constellation of Leo, because the sun rules the sign of Leo. It is in its detriment in the sign of Aquarius, which is right across from Leo, which is actually the definition of detriment. The sign across from the sign that a planet rules is its detriment. The sun is in its exaltation in Aries, and it is in its fall in Libra. The sun is in its house of joy in the 9th house, which is traditionally and historically called the house of God. So these are the characteristics of the sun. This is what the sun brings to the table, and this is how you work with the sun. You will see that as I scroll, I put the same information in for each planet. and each planetary body. So the moon is the divine feminine. Mercury is the messenger of God, right? We know that already. So on and so forth, it goes down and it lists the character, it lists the characteristics that the planetary body brings. It will list the essential dignities and the house of joy for each planet if there is one. Not all of them have everything. So I'm going to scroll back up. On the right side of the chart, there's space for you to fill this in to personalize it for yourself. So for your natal chart, your birth date, your birth time, we want to write down the sign in the house that your sun happens to be in. And your sun, let's say, for example, is in the 7th house of Aries. Now, when we look back to the left side, the sun is in its house of joy in the 9th house. So if it's in the 7th house, we know it's not in its house of joy. But the essential dignities say, hey, if your sun is in Aries, it is exalted. And so we want to write down in this 3rd column where it says health check that your sun is in Aries and it is exalted. We're going to go through this whole table just like that. We're going to look from one planetary body to the next and write down all the pertinent information as outlined in the table. And then by the end of this, you will get to the point where you have a complete snapshot of basically the focal points in your natal chart, which are going to be important for you to be able to start analyzing your chart. That was the example of the chart I wanted to share with you. In our next video, we're going to walk through that sample chart together and fill in the blanks. We will fill in this sample chart I made up in Greenland so you can follow along and do it for yourself, okay? Until next time, remember to find your passion, connect to your soul, and go and get your whole life. All the love, peoples, all the love. Good night.